After Prime Minister became Mr. Modi took over, Chief Justice Thakur was the last one who stood up. After that, every Chief Justice has virtually succumbed except Justice Sanjiv Khanna, Justice Dipak Misra, Justice Khehar, Justice Gogoi, Justice Ramana, Justice Bobde, Justice Chandrachud. Each one of them really failed the country, failed the judicial system, and most of all, failed justice delivery. Single biggest reason of failure of rule of law in this country is judiciary, because the executive will definitely like to take law into its own hands, but it is the judiciary which has a duty, obligation, a pious duty, a constitutional duty to stop that nonsense, and judiciary has not been able to do it at all.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. One of the most highly regarded lawyers of our time, Dushyant Dave, has surprised everyone by announcing his retirement from the legal profession days after his 70th birthday. Why has he taken this step? How does he look back on a career spanning half a century? And how does he view the state of the judiciary in India today? Those are the key issues I shall raise today with Dushyant Dave, who's also a 3-time former president of the Supreme Court Bar Association. Mr. Dave, on Sunday, through a social media message, you announced that having turned 70, you've decided, as you put it, to quit the profession of law. Why? Surely it can't be because of your age.
Well, it is not because of my age, but that 70th year gave me a good excuse or platform to formalize my decision. I had been mulling over it for quite some time, and this I thought was the best way to make the announcement and leave the profession. It was just, I would say, a very beautiful coincidence, because 70th birthday was a special day. We were celebrating with the family in South Africa with my kids and 4 lovely grandkids, my wife. So I talked to them, and they were not very sure whether I should go out or not. They wanted me to perhaps put in 2 more years to complete 50. But then I came back, went to US, came back. And every day I was thinking that why should I wait for 2 years? I don't need a milestone of 50 years. I've done enough. And if I want to leave now, for whatever reasons that I have, I must make the announcement. So that's how, I quickly asked my wife that I'm making the announcement. Would you agree to it? And she wholeheartedly supported it. And I just, wrote down 2 messages to Bar and Bench and Live Law. And that's it now.
But it's interesting. You did consider the possibility of continuing for 2 more years so that you could have completed 50 years as a lawyer. But that didn't charm and encourage you.
No, my kids were very keen about it. My son who's a lawyer, his wife who's a lawyer too in Bombay, my daughter and my son-in-law. And I think my wife also felt. But I wasn't really influenced by that factor. I told them that how does it matter whether it is 48 years or 50 years? Anyway, I don't want to celebrate, this kind of a thing. So yes, it may have crossed my mind, but I was never persuaded by that argument.
Let's first talk about your career as a lawyer. I gather you began with a salary of just 250 rupees a month And in those early days, you shared a residence with the High Court peon. What were those days like?
They were very, I would say, dark days because my father, who was a High Court judge, very highly respected, he had retired from the High Court. He had retired from the chairmanship of the Education Tribunal, which he, was occupying post-retirement from High Court, and he had gone to Baroda. And I had no place to stay in Ahmedabad, and my father had no money to support me. He told me very categorically that I cannot support you because all that I have is my pension. In those days, the pension was meager 750 rupees or something for a retired judge of the High Court. So he said, I don't think I will be able to support you. He was very keen. I joined the services, and I did, I did make an attempt, but I was happy that I failed. But I was determined. And so my first senior was Mr. Justice S.B. Majmudar, who came to Supreme Court and won the hearts of one and every. But within 6 months of his becoming a judge, my joining his chamber, he became a judge. So then I had to leave. And then I joined Mr. Shelat, a senior lawyer of Ahmedabad, who later became Advocate General and one of the most respected lawyers. And I was with him for about a year. But both of them were paying me 250 rupees a month. And it was a difficult time to survive. And luckily, Jilu Singh, this kind peon of the High Court, whom my father had appointed way back in 1970 in the High Court, he came to my rescue and he said, Baba, we will share the apartment. I will pay half the rent, you pay half rent. So 200 rupees was the rent. I still remember that complex called Everbella Flats. So I put him a further condition on him. I said, but you will cook for me. So he said, all right, I will cook for you. And I said, I can't pay you anything now. He said, no problem. So that's how, this beautiful journey began. And it was, the rest is, then it followed.
Tell
And
me, did that friendship continue? Does it mean a lot to you today, or is it all over?
No. Jilu Singh, till he died, unfortunately, in COVID, and his family didn't inform me that he was suffering from COVID. Otherwise, I would have tried to save him. He continued to remain part of our family. And from time to time, I helped him immensely in his children's weddings, and other things. And his brothers were employed by my father, again, in various positions in courts and tribunals. And they still remain in touch. The brother who would invariably call me every 15 days. We have been to their village also for weddings. They became part and parcel of the family. It was not a relationship of a peon and master. It was a relationship of somebody, who's, I was younger, he was little elder to me. And it was a beautiful friendship.
Now tell me, as you look back on your career, what for you were the memorable cases that you fought?
Well, I must have dealt with several thousand cases. And I must tell you that at a time when everything was looking bleak, once I started practice, I left Mr. Shelat in just 1.5 years. But we got a fantastic opportunity because in Gujarat High Court, the government of Gujarat then was defending itself in writ petitions through government solicitors. These firms were from Bombay, Ambubai and Divanji, Shankar Kanga and Company, and Purnanand and Company. And they used to engage young lawyers as their counsel to appear before the High Court in these writ petitions. So Justice Anil Dave, who retired from Supreme Court, Justice Mohit Shah, who retired as Chief Justice of Bombay High Court, late Mr. Kirit Rawal, who unfortunately died young, who was the Solicitor General of India during Mr. Vajpayee's tenure. He was the third guy, and I was the fourth youngest person of the team. And we got an opportunity to argue, several hundred, maybe several thousand cases in those 2 years that I defended the government. 30 rupees a brief, including typing charges. And most of the money was not paid. But the experience, the exposure that we got in those, because there were writs of all kinds, was amazing. And that was a platform where I learned the most. Then, of course, sometimes these are all coincidences. I came across one of the finest human beings I've met in my life, Mr. Trivedi, who was a former, superintendent of excise and customs, who post his retirement, very honest man, started his own consulting firm in excise and customs. And those days, excise customs was very important. So he started briefing me as a young lawyer. I mean, this is 82, 83. And one of my first cases was the famous, in fact, 1980 Nirma case, where Nirma's plants were shut down by a surprise raid by the DRI, because the allegation was from a rival multinational company that Nirma was enjoying an exemption as a small scale unit producing detergent powder without aid of power, while it was actually using the power. And so the factory was shut down. And that's when I first met Mr. Karsanbhai Patel as a young businessman. Then his turnover was 14 crores or something. Today it is more than 25,000 crores. And we moved the High Court and we said we are not using power in manufacturing. We are only using power to pump the raw material to the overhead tanks. And from there, with the aid of gravitational force, these raw materials come. So the process of manufacture does not use any power. We won that case in High Court. Chief Justice Diwan decided in our favor. And then it came to Supreme Court. Mr. Palkhiwala was leading me in Supreme Court. We won in Supreme Court also. So that was a very milestone case which gave me a great recognition throughout the state. It was and Karsanbhai became a very personal friend over the years. And I defended him in tens of cases, always winning his cases. I never lost a single case of Nirma Group. So
as you look back on your career, what would you say was the case that gave you greatest satisfaction? Which was the most challenging? Which was the most satisfying?
See, as you are aware, I must have done not less than 500 pro bono cases. And each one of these cases was giving me the greatest satisfaction, because these were teachers, these were doctors, these were salaried people. These were trade unions of thousands of members, Fertilizer Corporation Trade Union, etc. These were servicemen from the armed forces. I have never charged them for almost 48 years. And all these cases, activists, members of the minority community, Muslims and Christians or Sikhs. So all these cases that I fought over a long period of time, I think I started doing pro bono work way back in 1982, along with my professionally paid briefs. And those matters really gave me immense satisfaction. But one case which stands out to me as most gratifying, to support the rule of law, was this case where the governments of the states and the central government all together wanted that the accused should be compulsorily administered narco analysis test, brain mapping test, and lie detector test. Now there, Supreme Court appointed me as amicus. It was a bench headed by Justice Balakrishnan and comprised of Justice Panchal and Justice Ravindran, I think. And they asked me to assist the court. And they were greatly impressed by the argument on behalf of all the states and the central government that to fight terrorism, it is necessary that we must have right to compulsorily administer these kind of tests to the accused to get the truth. And my defense was the right to remain silent is sacrosanct, and it has been established over thousands of years. And we don't want to convert our courts into some kind of gas chambers or some kind of other chambers where you can extract confessions and then condemn people to prisons. So I said this is very important. It's a constitutional right. It's a basic human right. And the matter went on for weeks, and ultimately I succeeded. And that was one of my greatest satisfaction, that I could really ensure that the criminal justice system remains, with the two fundamental principles, presumed innocent and burden of proof on the prosecution. That burden can't be shifted through these kind of, tests, compulsorily extracting confessions. So I think that was really a turning point to me as a lawyer.
Would this have been the first time that the Indian judicial system accepted the individual's right to be silent?
No, Supreme Court has been very, conscious of individuals' right from the 50s in one form or the other. But this was a unique case because, these methods have developed in last 20, 25 years in India. I mean, they may have been known in America and Western world, But in India, these methods became to be, known and practiced in last about 2 to 3 decades. So I think every prosecutor and every policeman would like to, use these methods, because that's an easy way to get, to prove the case against a person.
Let me approach your legal career in a different way. Who were the judges, whether at the High Court or the Supreme Court, that you most admired and most respected? Who were the judges that you would place on a pedestal when you look back?
One judge who stands out, tallest amongst all of them in my 48 years, was Justice P.D. Desai of the Gujarat High Court. He later became Chief Justice of Himachal Pradesh, Calcutta High Court and Bombay High Court, and refused to come to Supreme Court when Chief Justice Venkatachalaya asked him to come to Supreme Court, because he said, "You have brought my junior judge before me. I therefore have no right to now, come to Supreme Court." But he was one man, one judge, in whose heart there was nothing but justice. In his every vein, justice was running through. And that man knew how to do justice. When I was a young lawyer, as I said, defending the government, he would be on the writ side. And my God, the way he would, dispense with justice and removing justice instantly, it was unbelievable. If a pensioner had not got pension, he will call upon me to call the Accountant General's office, of his people from Rajkot next morning at 11 o'clock. And he will see the file personally and make sure that the file is corrected. And if the pension is due, it must be paid within 24 hours. If he found that his orders were flouted, then he will make sure that Chief Secretary and Home Secretary or Director General of Police were summoned to the court. And he will make sure that his orders were implemented. Very courageous. In a simple case, I will tell you, during riots of 1984 in Ahmedabad, the police occupied a playground which children used to play cricket on. And these kids wrote a letter to Justice P.D. Desai that they have taken away. And in those days, curfews used to go on for weeks and months on. So this was that those riots relating to this Kshatriya and other Madhav Singh Solanki's time. So he called me post lunch and he said, "Mr. Dave, this is unacceptable. You please ask Police Commissioner that they must vacate the ground forthwith." I rang up Police Commissioner Mr. Manmohan Singh and he said, "If this is what Chief Justice Desai wants, I don't think I can stand in the way." And by evening, the ground was vacated. Now, that kind of a man, he was unbelievable. His integrity was unimpeachable. His conduct was unbelievable. His attitude was unbelievable. Would never meet anybody. His life was simple simple as simple. He had no children. He would not meet anybody. He had, most of the work he and his wife would do alone at home. He was staying in a rented accommodation. He didn't stay in a government accommodation. But the man was outstanding.
Let me ask you the opposite question. Who were the judges who you believe let down their profession, whom you did not respect and do not look up to?
Well, that list is too long. And I don't think I should really rattle out those names. It would not be fair to them. But I must say that till I left the Gujarat High Court in 1986, Gujarat High Court had an impeccable record as so far as judiciary was concerned. And I must say each judge was par excellence in terms of caliber, in terms of integrity, in terms of courtesy, in terms of, everything. It was a joy to appear before those judges.
What about the Supreme Court? You came there in the late 90s. How have Supreme Court judges stood up in your estimation?
I came in late 80s, but I started coming to Supreme Court in early 80s for my cases from Ahmedabad. And I would say that in the 80s, the judges were still adorable. Judges like Chinnappa Reddy, judges like Krishna Iyer, they were outstanding. But there were many judges who were extremely, I would say, intellectually biased. Some judges were so biased that they will only decide in favor of a tenant. Some judges were so biased that they will only decide in favor of a worker. Some judges only will decide in favor of against the favor of the government against the citizens. So that line of judges started from the 80s, and they continued, and they continue even today. So that list is very, very long, Karan. Unfortunately, over the last almost 4 decades that I've been at the Supreme Court, I would say that judges who were extremely independent, who were intellectually also very, highly, capable, and whose conduct in the court was really exemplary, were really far and few. One example is Justice Ruma Pal. I mean, she was outstanding. Another is Chief Justice Venkatchalaya, for example. He was outstanding. Justice Thakur was outstanding recent period. There have been many judges who have been really very, very good, and they were relief-giving judges. But there have been successive Chief Justices in Supreme Court in last 4 decades who have disastrously failed because they either lacked competence or they lacked, moral rectitude. So, I mean, it has been a serious, I would say, erosion of the quality of judges in the Supreme Court. And as I have said publicly in the past, and I can reiterate that the single reason for that is the collegium system which judges have, formed for themselves. They appoint themselves, and they more often than not appoint people who are not, meritorious to the Supreme Court.
But you're making a very important point. You're saying that over the 40 years that you have been practicing in front of the Supreme Court, the quality of Supreme Court judges has deteriorated. And in fact, in an interview that you gave Live Law last year, 2024, you said, and I'm quoting you, the judiciary is at its weakest in modern Indian history today.
It is, and we saw that. I mean, after Prime Minister became Mr. Modi took over, Chief Justice Thakur was the last one who stood up. After that, every Chief Justice has virtually succumbed except Justice Sanjiv Khanna, And although Justice Gogoi has had a very short stint, we will, evaluate him after 6 months. But barring Justice Khanna, Justice Dipak Misra, Justice Khehar, Justice Gogoi, Justice Ramana, Justice Bobde, Justice Chandrachud, each one of them really failed the country, failed the judicial system, and most of all, failed justice delivery.
But you mean that these Chief Justices failed the country, they failed the judicial system, they failed the judiciary? You mean that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have no doubt about it. And we need not go into individual, cases, but there are hundreds of cases in which they compromise themselves at the instance of the government, party in power. And that is really sad commentary on Supreme Court that judges should. The entire, intellectual output has been, I would say, below average. And, judges like Chandrachud will, of course, write very flowery language and big judgments, and then at the end will give no relief and really let the country down. Because, with that kind of education, you have so many degrees, Harvard and God knows Cambridge or Oxford or whatever. I didn't even have a master's degree. As a lawyer, I just, because I had no money, I became a lawyer, and next day I started practicing. So it's very surprising that these judges were otherwise constitutionally protected. Nobody can touch them. We are seeing this, that even with so much money being found against judges, no action is being taken against them. But these judges who are constitutionally protected, I don't know why they should have compromised, why they should have allowed cases after cases to be decided, why they should have allowed compromising the liberties of citizens, freedom of citizens, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of opinion, and their lives and their liberties. It's very sad that these Chief Justices, and they did it in more than one way, because not only they failed, but they ensured that the registry of the Supreme Court was allowed to be manipulated by vested interests. And that has caused a serious erosion, because the rich and the powerful have therefore hijacked the registry. And they, over the years, I have been seeing, are getting cases listed before, judges of their choice. And they have been succeeding in wrongly, not rightly. So, and there are a large number of instances of this. I need not enumerate them, but large number of instances which I personally know, which I have personally faced, which I have personally opposed. Sometimes I have succeeded in my opposition. Many a times I have failed. But it skewed justice.
You began that answer by naming a whole list of chief justices who you said failed the country, failed the judicial system, failed the judiciary. And all of them were chief justices during the last 11 years that Mr. Modi was prime minister.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, they were all, I must say one thing, that all of them were good judges when they were puny judges. Something happened when they took over as chief justices and they suddenly changed from, being good relief giving judges to, judges who became virtually anti-citizen. It is it is inexplicable why this should happen to these, judges who are otherwise so good. As puny judges, I must say that Justice Dipak Misra, Justice Khehar, Justice Gogoi, Justice Chandrachud, Justice Bobde, all of them were really good. They had the good sense of doing justice. But that chair of the Chief Justice somehow changed them overnight.
Can I ask you bluntly, was it in some way intimidation or the influence of Mr. Modi? Is there a connection between him being prime minister and these people being chief justices at the same time, and each and every one of them, you say, failed the country?
Well, I don't know whether there is a direct connection between the prime minister or them, but I have no doubt that the way they decided, important cases relating to, constitution law and public interest, the judgments that they have given really raise very serious question marks. And they really can tell us that these judgments were not objective, but they were subjective judgments which were given. So naturally, there is no doubt that it must be because of the influence wielded by the prime minister, because of his sheer personality, or maybe out of some kind of a compromise, maybe out of some kind of a fear. Because you see, what has happened over the years is that these chief justices have started becoming friendly with the prime minister. We saw that Justice Gogoi, had private conversations with him in the chamber of the chief justice when prime minister came for some official function which he should not have even attended. And judges' families came and everybody met prime minister and had themselves, selfie photographed. You saw, Justice Chandrachud doing Aarti at his house with prime minister. And all these judges have invited him to their children's weddings. So, it is very shocking that the distance which was supposed to be maintained between politicians and judges, or between the executive and the judiciary, that distance has really disappeared. And as a result of that, naturally, you feel obliged when you have this prime minister coming to your son's wedding and next day you are hearing an important case against his government. You are bound to have a subconscious feeling that, oh, yes, he was so kind to come to my son's wedding. I must therefore decide in his favor. It's a natural, you need to be of an exemplary character like P.D. Desai to really not be influenced by that fact. And believe you me, P.D. Desai would never have met any of these politicians. Never.
Let me approach this issue a little differently. There is a view that in terms of critical judgments, such as Article 370 or the Ram Mandir, as well as in terms of the appointment of judges, the judiciary of the last 10 years has been overawed by the Modi government. To what extent do you agree with that view?
Absolutely correct. No doubt about it. Why this? Look at Rafael case. This seal cover, jurisprudence which Gogoi started is an anathema to democracy. What nonsense. You don't even give to the petitioners this information which government shared with you. Some 3 officers from the Air Force land up, give in sealed cover in Rafael matter. CBI director's removal at 2 o'clock in the night. All kinds of, there are hundreds of such cases. These are not the only cases. There are a large number of such cases of all kinds of people. All these, for example, these people who were, falsely charged, I would say, in Bhima Koregaon case. Their cases were taken before selective benches. And many corporate, litigants before the Supreme Court, their cases were taken before selective benches. Everybody, getting relief. Government is getting relief in its favor. These business people are getting relief in their favor. All that has become, unfortunately, is a matter of record. And it's not happening in isolated cases. It's happening in large number of cases.
Let me ask you, is the judiciary viable?
Well, look, I have no idea about the financial integrity of these judges. I would say that, I mean, all these chief justices, for example, they were known for their, integrity. Nobody could touch them financially. I mean, one would respect them for that. As I said, they were also at one stage good judges and giving relief. But intellectual dishonesty is far worse than financial, dishonesty. If you are going to be, influenced by political considerations because the party in power wants a particular judgment or a government of the day wants a particular judgment or particular businessman wants a particular judgment, I think that is really something which is sad for the nation, for the democracy, for rule of law, and for administration of justice.
In which case, how do you explain the electoral bond judgment? That was a judgment that was very important to this government. It was very sensitive for the Modi government. They made a lot of money from electoral bonds, but it went against them. Was it an aberration? Was it an exception?
Well, I can only characterize that judgment as Operation Successful, Patient Dead. What has been achieved in that judgment? Nothing. When Prashant Bhushan went back and wanted, certain investigations to be done against all those donors where there was, quid pro quo, same Chief Justice Chandrachud refused to interfere. So you give an academic judgment, and then when it comes to practically implementing it, you failed. So what was I will say that judgment is of no consequence. I don't give it any. I mean, yes, you have given great language and, great words about it and impress the people, impress perhaps even the foreign universities where you go and give lecture. But I mean, to me, it was useless because we saw concrete examples of quid pro quo in electoral bonds. To the extent that you used these bonds to even give reprieve to accused in certain cases in which the accused were involved with opposition leaders. So while opposition leaders suffered, the other accused who were actually party to the bribery charges were allowed to go scot-free. And judges sustained it in Supreme Court in cases after cases. So that case I don't think is of any consequence.
Let me try something else with you. How much credit do you give the Supreme Court for judgments it's passed on issues like homosexuality, adultery, Sabarimala, privacy? Do you believe that these are instances where the Supreme Court had the capacity and the courage to stand up for rights because they were non-political? And is that why the Supreme Court felt it could be progressive? Whereas on political issues which touch upon the interests of the government, it was not just conservative, but it seemed to follow what the government wanted.
I think, most of these judgments were given because of, the desire to gain publicity. They may be jurisprudentially correct. I'm not saying no. But the same judges, are willing to be, liberal and progressive in one, area of, cases before them. And when it comes to the other, I mean, which is far more important, namely, right to freedom of the citizen, his right to express, opinions, his liberty, there you fail. So what's the point of, talking about the judgments, which really, they are important judgments and they are, they are advancement to a great extent. Government itself should have considered before the Supreme Court that in all these cases like homosexuality, adultery and all, we believe that what is the existing provisions are really not right. But that's apart. I mean, government has its own approach. I feel that the test of the judges is where they come and stand up for citizens in cases like civil liberties. If you cannot uphold constitutional rights, then I don't think, judiciary, I would say to that extent, judiciary is losing its respect. It is scoring self-goals.
You're most disappointed with the judiciary when it's a question of standing up for civil rights vis-a-vis the government.
Absolutely. Deeply disappointed. Deeply disappointed. Because, this is a court which gives great, bhashans on civil liberties and everything. But when it comes to individual cases, the same court fails. I mean, all kinds of people have suffered. Stand-up comedians have suffered, critics have suffered, opposition leaders have suffered. accused, falsely implicated in cases, political cases have suffered. I mean, look at that journalist, poor fellow who had gone to cover that rape case in
Siddiq Kapur. Siddiq Kapur.
I mean, what have we done? Look at this. One example I give is this, Shah Rukh Khan's son's arrest. The FIR says that no drugs were found on him. Yet, this great judiciary of India sends that young boy to police remand, then declines bail. And that boy had to spend almost 30 days in jail without any reason. Now, you have destroyed the psyche of a young child like this. And you don't take any action. I said again and again that these judges who did this should be suspended and dismissed because this is gross dereliction of duty. But no, nothing happens to them. And this rot has started in the lowest judiciary because they see in the Supreme Court that if Supreme Court is not willing to stand up for citizens, in civil liberty cases, why should we give bail to anybody? Just send them to jail.
Does this mean that when the history of the Indian judiciary is written, the last 10, 12 years will be a bad, dark, sorry chapter?
I would say not just last 10, 12 years. I mean, this rot has set in from the 80s. This rot has set in from the 80s.
Is it getting worse?
And it happened also during emergency. I mean, one of the worst judgments in the history of judiciary was when they, said that fundamental rights could be suspended. So that was in 76. So, I mean, or for example, having a late night hearing and giving, relief to Mrs. Indira Gandhi, I mean, by Justice Krishna. I mean, these are all instances which really make you wonder or giving relief to Thapar, that industrialist in the middle of the night, by Justice Venkatramayya. I mean, these things really leave a very sour taste in our mouth. That here is Supreme Court, which is supposed to protect ordinary citizens, is willing to walk miles for these powerful people, but it doesn't come to the aid of a common man. What's the point? Why? How can one, respect such a judiciary? I love judiciary. As I have said again and again, my father was a judge, and I came into legal profession because I wanted to. I wanted to come and practice because I loved, legal profession. But at the end of the day, you do feel sad that things are, and nobody is willing to correct anything. Nobody. I mean, the kind of judges which are being appointed day in and day out, even today, barring some judges, many of the judges should not have come to Supreme Court in last 30 years. But they have come. And and they have gone away without leaving, fortunately, any mark whatsoever, except that they have, and many of them have gone as prosperous.
Let me come to one last subject. In an interview that you gave me in 2024, that is last year, you said you were very concerned about the state of democracy in India. And in particular, you said you were very concerned about minority rights. You said, and I'm quoting you, "I have sleepless nights thinking about it. I'm worried about my country." Have things improved or have they got worse since that interview a year ago?
You see, it can never improve now. Unfortunately, we have missed the bus. And single biggest reason of failure of rule of law in this country is judiciary. Because the executive will definitely like to take law into its own hands. But it is the judiciary which has a duty, obligation, a pious duty, a constitutional duty to stop that nonsense. And judiciary has not been able to do it at all. The attacks against the minority community, be it Christians, be it Muslims, be it Sikhs, have gone unabated. Look at 1984 riots. Look at 2002 riots. Not a single police officer or an administrative service officer of any rank or a politician has been found guilty. You think these riots took place without their blessings? I mean, it would be naive to think that these riots were allowed to go on unabated for 4 days. You don't call the army within few hours. So, thousands of people died on this. Even today, take, for example, the encounters, the Justice Patna, one BJP businessman, BJP-oriented businessman is killed, and his alleged murderers are, killed. Why? Who has decided that they were the murderers? Judiciary has not given a verdict. So you become, the accuser, you become the prosecutor, you become the judge, and you become the executioner. And National Human Rights Commission sits over it, High Court sits over it, Supreme Court sits over it. We are allowing these encounters to take place openly. We are allowing demolitions to take place openly. Who has decided that all these, somebody's house is illegal? And I dare say, if you want to start, don't limit it. Yes, I am against anybody occupying public space. They must be dealt with, but you must deal with them with even hands. So there are large number of areas. Take, for example, Kapasera, where I have my farms. I know that there are large number of people who have illegally occupied government lands. There are some 300 or 400 colonies in Delhi which are unauthorized. Do you want to take action against them? No. But when it comes to minority community members, you find every excuse to attack and destroy their homes. So, and judges sit. I mean, these judges are sitting without doing anything. Chief Justice Gogoi made a correct statement in Italy, I think. And he said that we have stopped this, demolition justice system, bulldozer justice system, but only in passing. Yes, he confirmed the stay in the matter which I was arguing. And I must say, Justice Ramana gave the stay in Jahangirpuri without even a petition having been filed against demolitions, illegal demolition. And Justice Gogoi confirmed that. But the governments are not following that, the BJP ruled governments. And this is something which I feel that if you do not have a strong rule of law, democracy is definitely in danger.
Let me repeat the way you began that answer. I think I'm repeating verbatim what you said. You said the single biggest reason for the failure of rule of law in India is the judiciary. They are meant to be the guardians of the rule of law. They are now the cause for the failure.
Yes, absolutely, undoubtedly. Because, it's so easy to stop this nonsense. You strike at the government, this would not have happened. I swear to God that between 1978 to 86, when I practiced in Gujarat High Court, this kind of a nonsense, judges like P.D. Desai would have stopped it like this. Chief Justice B.J. Divan, even Chief Justice Poti, who came from Kerala to Gujarat, outstanding. Many other judges, I don't want to name, many judges like this, but, that was their love for citizens, that they would not allow the executive to act outside the framework of law. That is what is important. The criminal in penal code or the new laws that they have borrowed, they don't provide punishment of demolition of homes. Where do you get this power to demolish somebody's homes because he is an alleged offender? Because a Muslim boy has run away with a Hindu girl, they fell in love. So you go and demolish his house? Now, in that house, his parents live, his brother, sister live. Which right do you have to touch these properties? It's wholly unconstitutional. In a civilized society, it is unthinkable. So we are not a civilized society now. If we can't stop this nonsense, to kill these Patna alleged murderers in broad daylight, it's shocking. Yes, they are murderers. They must be brought to justice. They must be dealt with in accordance with law. And if found guilty, they must be given harshest punishment. Nobody denies that. But punishment according to law.
That is a very powerful answer. What it reveals is your disillusionment with the judiciary.
Yes, there is no doubt that there is great dissatisfaction in more than one way. Corruption in judiciary, inefficiency in judiciary, lack of merits in judiciary, and its inability to uphold the constitution to the hilt. You have to lean in favor of citizen against the government. Even if two views are possible, you lean in favor of citizen. You don't lean in favor. Today, jurisprudence is changed. The burden of proof is shifted on us, citizens. That's not the way it is done. There are individual judges who are doing a great job. There are individual judges who are extremely honest, hardworking, and they adhere to constitutional principles. Many of them. And they are respected. The judicial system knows them. judicial system, every lawyer would respect them. I would also respect them. They know that I respect them. But there are a large number of others who fail. But these judges also are not willing to take up these causes, suo moto. Why can't you take suo moto action against these Patna killings like this? Why can't you take action against the UP government for having killed more than 400 people in, bogus encounters? I mean, are you going to cleanse the society like this? Then why not pick up the black marketeers? Why not pick up the tax evaders? Why not pick up those who have defrauded banks of maybe 4, 5, 6 lakh crores? You pick them up because they are equally guilty. They have done more damage to society at large than these small people have done.
Mr. Dave, I hear your passion. I hear your cry of anguish when you watch the judiciary and you talk about how it's let the country down. Are you sure you want to retire at this point?
Yes.
And when you get bored playing golf, will you think of coming back?
No, I have many other passions besides golf, reading, music, traveling, being with the family, being with friends. And of course, my wife and I want to do something really meaningful by, trying to help, people in Gujarat, especially, in Baroda district, where my parents, I come from Baroda. But my father came from a small village called Sankheda. My mother came from a village near thereby called Gogoi. And they are now taluks. I would like to go and, try and see if we can contribute in some meaningful way in, helping people, agriculturists and other poor people there.
So this decision to retire is set in stone. There's no way you'll change your mind.
No way. I've even given up my gown. I gave it away. And I'm soon going to give away all my law books. To either my young colleagues or to the library. I'm not going to. Law is, when I joined with a passion, and I was really enjoying it. First 20 years, it was a dream run. Thereafter, yes, I was successful, and I really enjoyed it. I've achieved tremendous affection and love and respect from large number of people, judges, lawyers, litigants, general public, for what I've contributed in my small way. But then the disillusionment started when I saw that judges were not judges. They were, they were like ordinary people like us, with all biases, prejudices, likes and dislikes. That thing really troubled me.
Okay. Let's leave it there. I wish you all good fortune and all good luck in the new chapter of your life that's about to open, retirement. Time to be with the family, your wife, your children, your grandchildren, time to read, time to listen to music, time to play golf.
I think you can
never change your mind, but if you ever change your mind, do think of coming back to the bar.
No, I will not. But you can see the change on my face already. I'm, much more relaxed now.
So, I can certainly see the change in the color of the clothes you're wearing. You're wearing pink for the first time.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I really want to be away from this profession. Of course, I will continue my meetings with my friends at the bar, meeting those judges whom I respect. And I will, of course, be writing on legal issues, constitutional issues. I'll be speaking to people on these issues again and again. So that's something which I'm not going to give up. I mean, one must speak out, one must stand up and, remind judiciary and the executive both wherever some, infractions of constitution take place.
Well, Mr. Sanjiv, we look forward to hearing your voice again and again and again, particularly when you stand up and criticize those in power for the wrongs that they've done. Thank you very much for this interview. Good luck and take care.
Thank you so very much, Karan. Thanks a lot. It's been a privilege.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.